Welcome to the Center for Baptist Leadership Podcast, hosted by William Wolfe. Our mission is to cultivate courageous and biblical Baptist leadership for the 21st century. We aim to revitalize the Southern Baptist Convention from within, defend it from those who seek its destruction, and serve as a better Baptist voice in the public square.
Welcome back to the Center for Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, William Wolfe, and I'm joined today by one of our best guests from what's called our first season. I feel like we're essentially into a second season here of the CBL Podcast, and that is Pastor Willy Rice. He joined us last year to tell a fascinating and gripping tale of his own development in the life of the Southern Baptist Convention and how some things he used to believe he doesn't anymore and how he's seeing things a little bit differently now. It was very encouraging to so many people, so many of our listeners. So Willy, thank you for being back on.
It's good to be back. I think it's about this time last year, maybe. Seemed like late spring, a little bit before the convention. So we had a great time, a lot of reaction to that. And you were so kind to give us that opportunity. And it's good to be back with you.
Yeah, thanks, Willy. We'll just pencil it in here. The second week of May going forward is Willy Rice on the podcast week.
Well, it's always, and it's funny in Baptist life as things build toward June. There's always a lot of intrigue, a lot of questions that are flying in the air. It seems like that's kind of Baptist season to be talking about things that are happening.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, Willy, your podcast last year was gripping. I think it might be our most listened to episode. And I really appreciate your courage for joining me. Obviously, people know where Center for Baptist Leadership stands on issues. And if you'll indulge me for a second here, since I have you and people listen to this, I just want to reiterate that everything we engage on at Center for Baptist Leadership is out of a heart for the good of the Southern Baptist Convention and for the good and the glory, the good of the people, the glory of God, and the spread of the gospel. We see issues that we think need to be reformed so our gospel mission endures. That's our heart. I think that's your heart. But it was definitely a shift from somebody who was running for SBC president, who was sort of much more in a certain wing and now in another. What was the reaction and feedback you got from joining me last year?
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to just tell the story. People said, well, why did you tell it with, William and the Baptist Center for Leadership? I said, because they asked, they were curious, wanted to know. And it was a great opportunity. I thought it was a great forum just to share, again, without any kind of malice, without any kind of agenda, just to be as transparent as I could that, hey, there were things that had happened in the last 2 to 3 years that I had to, maybe a kind of a bird's eye seat to. It had changed my perspective. My world has somewhat been reoriented as I saw things that I had previously maybe had blind spots to. And, the whole idea of semper reformata, that out of that Reformation is about, we're always reforming, we're always learning, we're always being instructed, corrected, reproved by truth. And we ought to always be, all of our churches and every one of us. And, there were some lessons that I had learned, and I'm grateful for them and grateful for the opportunity. And I think the motive was, I think there are maybe a few guys out there like me who love the SBC, who have done life and ministry in the SBC and have a bent of trust and towards it, that just are beginning to see some things that had bothered us. And so maybe my story could help somebody. And certainly there were a lot of people that were very appreciative and very encouraging that we had a chance to tell it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and just remembering sort of the title now was Willy Rice, Waking Up in a Woke World. I love that. And really, you touched on how you saw good things in some of the reform initiatives that were being offered, or not reform, but some of the ways we were moving as a SBC, obviously trying to care for legitimate survivors of horrific abuse, a desire to make sure that all people are welcome in the SBC, regardless of their race or ethnicity. But smuggled in both of those in sort of the sex abuse crisis ideology and the CRT DEI ideology, you saw dangerous things that would take us down a dark path. And you said, hey, not anymore.
Yeah. I told somebody it's like this. If you walked into a crowded room of Baptists and said, hey, everybody who is against sexual abuse and wants to help stop it, get up and let's go over here to this corner. Everybody in the room, about 95%, get up and go to that corner. Or if somebody said, hey, everybody that is for racial reconciliation and for racial unity in the gospel, hey, let's get up and go over here to this. Everybody get up and go into the room. And that's kind of what I think Baptists did. I kind of think that's what Southern Baptists did. We all got up and went in the room because that's who we are. And then when you get in the room and you start listening to some of the things being said, you went, wait a second, I didn't think I signed up for that. That isn't what I thought this was going to be about. And we realized that other ideas had been smuggled in. And I don't know if it was intentionally hijacked. Maybe it was in some cases, or just a lot of very good people got, to use Joe Rigney's term, there was emotional sabotage. And we found ourselves in a place we didn't intend on being. That was kind of my story. I think it's a story of a whole lot of Southern Baptists also.
Yeah, amen to that. And we can leave it at that, folks. You can go find it, listen to it. It's a great episode. He also has an article up with us at the Center for Baptist Leadership on it. But now it's been a year. And so, Willy, just remind our listeners what your church is, how long you've been there, and tell us something that's been particularly encouraging for you as a minister of the gospel in your local Southern Baptist church lately.
First of all, thank you. Yeah, Calvary Baptist Church at Clearwater. I've been here. Last year we celebrated 20 years. So
congratulations.
So grateful for that. And 40 years in ministry. So half my ministry has been here. And we're grateful to God for that. God's been very faithful, very good. I think there's so many encouraging signs. The things that we're reading about young men, particularly, really wanting depth, wanting to be confronted, seriously challenged. That the age of kind of the fluff, the mushy middle, let's do a lot of entertainment. A lot of movements have come and gone in the church growth age that maybe influenced us in ways. By us, I mean just American evangelicalism. And that I really do see that has dissipated. We have a very large school here, a high school, probably one of the largest high schools I've told it's like one of the largest in the country. Over 900 high school students are in our 9th through 12th grade. I see a hunger for God among them, a passion for God. I mean, serious. I mean, they aren't interested in fluff. They want teaching. They want doctrine. They want substance. They want to be challenged. They are waking up. And the world that they are seeing is a world that they don't like. And they don't want a church that looks like the world. They want a church that is an antidote to the world. So I really echo what I'm reading in other sources and hearing in other places, just from personal experience. People are hungry for truth. They're hungry. They're not looking for something timely. They're looking for something that's timeless, something that's transcendent. And I see that in our young people. I see that in a lot of young men. And I see that in our students.
Well, that is encouraging. And I wasn't intending necessarily to go down this little trail with you, but this is really interesting. And so let me get a couple more thoughts from you on this cultural moment we're in. Because one of the things that we're seeing with the younger generation is they have felt very, I'm not sure if hurt's the right word, but betrayed. That's the word I'm looking for. They felt very betrayed, getting locked down during COVID, not missing their high school graduations, their college graduations. White young men in particular feel betrayed, being told that there's something inherently wrong with them just because of how God made them, and that they don't have a productive role to play in society. Marriage rates are down. I'm hearing dating is down everywhere. Men and women are having a harder time talking to each other. So the church really can be the antidote to that. And if not, then much darker and ungodly sort of manosphere ideologies will. So is that something you're seeing at play in your school and your church? You're seeing young people and you're trying to disciple them to sort of believe in a better future, believe in the gospel, and have a place in this world, marriage, family, homes, things like that?
Yes. I just think that they are hungry for transcendent truth. They are not impressed. And again, I've been doing ministry for 40 years. So all the trends come and go. We got a coffee bar in the lobby. We've got all this stuff. Okay, it's great. they could care less. They could care less. They're not interested in a fog machine and a light show. That is so unimpressive to them. They want to be challenged. They want to be taught, and they want to know that there is a better way than is being modeled out there in the world. And I really do see a lot of encouraging signs in that next generation of young girls, also young men who really are serious about their faith. And I mean, they're not looking for fluff. They're not looking for fluff. We have the antidote for what the world needs. Like, we've got the solution. And it's a shame that in too often we've been influenced to kind of try to be more like the world. They are not looking for attractional models. That's my experience. They really want something that's different than the world, not something that looks like the world.
That's fantastic. And actually, let me ask you this, because I feel like I'd be remiss to. How are you processing the new next Trump administration? How's that been? You know, a lot of, obviously Trump's been a polarizing figure for Christians, for evangelicals, and even for Southern Baptists. A lot of people think he's like the Antichrist. Many people think that this is a great opportunity for the church to really take ground in this administration. I'm not trying to wait your answer, but how are you processing the new Trump administration as a pastor?
I've always said President Trump is a complicated figure, and I've had a journey, a lot. Again, part of that journey is I was one of those guys, in 2016, I didn't trust him. I thought, boy, he's coming from a liberal perspective on things like abortion and sexuality issues, and his own background is certainly very, very different than ours. But I have watched, and by the time 2024 came around, I would have run through fire to vote for him, quite honestly, because the difference was just so remarkable. I'm not in the Donald Trump praise band. I mean, there are things that certainly he does, positions he's taken that I've been willing to disagree on and would disagree on. But the difference between this administration and what could have been is so remarkable that I'm so grateful that he is the president. I'm praying for him. I'm grateful for the kinds of people that he is putting in office and the kinds of policies. Again, we can disagree on things, and we should. We should be free. We're not partisan hacks, but I'm grateful for some of the things that I see happening. And I do think it is a moment where we can seize a moment and be grateful for leaders that we have, and hopefully the church can be what the church is supposed to do. So I am grateful for President Trump. I'm very vocal. I voted for him last time. I rejoice that he won, and doesn't mean he's perfect. He's far from that. But God uses imperfect people. God uses flawed people, and God uses imperfect politicians. But I'm grateful for, when would you have ever thought, William, that it would be courageous for a politician to get up and say, there's two genders? That's like saying the sky is blue. But you know what? In an age of insanity, saying the truth is the most courageous thing you can do. And to watch him get up and say something like that, well, other people weren't saying that. He said it. And I'm just profoundly grateful that he would say it. So doesn't mean he's perfect. Doesn't mean there aren't some positions he's taken that I go, well, I wish it was different. But boy, I'm grateful for some courageous clarity like that I've seen over and over again. So I am thankful he's there. And I am thankful for this moment that I think has taught the church, again, we came through an era in which as evangelicals, we were being taught by some of our leaders that we needed to downplay politics, not be engaged in the public square, that we needed to separate, if we were gospel centered and gospel focused, that meant we should not be speaking about cultural, political issues. And again, I find that we mentioned the young people a moment ago. I find that people are hungry for churches that will speak with clarity and conviction. Clarity is kindness right now. And what we need in a morally confusing age is convictional clarity and courage. I'm grateful that at least this administration gives us the opportunity to do that, and that they have echoed that in many, many cases. So I'm very thankful for it.
Well, Willie, that's great. I think that's exactly right. It's a chance to celebrate and build, and exactly like what you said, in a world that's gone crazy, just telling the truth is one of the most courageous things that we can do. And really for the church to kind of lean into it. I've seen people say that when the church says, I'm not going to be political, and then the devil makes gender politics,
Yeah.
what's your answer? It's like checkmate Christians. I just made male and female Genesis 1:27 a political issue because you told me you didn't want to be political. So
Right.
now what do we do? Well, you have to be political, defending God's good creation order.
Yeah, I think we need almost to recover a kind of understanding of how, as a church, we need to engage in political issues. And you see it now very clearly. We had evangelical leaders for a decade who basically told us, don't be political. Don't be political. That you can either be culture, as one leader told me, we're missionaries, we're not culture warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's just so much that's wrong with that. You're creating an artificial distinction. And yes, we're to be on mission. Absolutely. But our mission sometimes means speaking about cultural issues and caring about our home and caring about our land. And so we ended up not talking about things that needed to be talked about. And we raised a generation of people that now are ignorant about some of those very fundamental truths. So I think we need a kind of renaissance. I think it's happening. You and others who are saying, look, we do need to engage the public sphere. We do need to talk about these things. And we went through a season of, and I gave a speech not long ago where, we went through this whole season of God's not on the right or on the left. God doesn't ride. Tony Evans would say, and it was a great quote, God doesn't ride the backs of donkeys or elephants. And Rick Warren would say, I'm not for the left wing, the right wing, I'm for the whole bird. And I said, and somebody even said at a convention sermon, God is not on the right or the left. And he's above all and over all and Lord of all. And I said, I know that one because I said it. And it's true in a sense. Of course, God is not defined by ever-changing political categories. But the problem with that is it now seems so ignorant given the moment we are in, because there are issues that are much bigger than partisanship that are one side is absolutely true and one side is absolutely false. And it is not courage to ignore that. It is courage to say that side is right and that side is wrong. And if this politician happens to be on the right side, well, so be it. And if that politician happens to be on the wrong side, so be it. But it's right and wrong. The truth is not somewhere in the middle. The truth is right there in the Word of God. And we've got to say that. So on issues like gender ideology, which is like the full toxic bloom of this confusion. And it just went so far that I think everyone went, wow, we should have been talking about this a lot sooner. And if we had, maybe we wouldn't have gotten this far. So I'm grateful for a lot of young leaders. Some of them. And I think I've seen it just kind of, again, in my own journey. They're waking up and saying our responsibility is to engage the culture and it is to speak truth to cultural issues. Absolutely. And our people are hungry for it.
Yeah, that's right. I was recently looking again at this John Piper quote from 1999. I had given a talk a little over a year ago on the importance of courage in the Christian life. And that's when I first found this quote. But Piper says that there is a kind of cowardice that tells only the truths that are safe to tell. Yep. And I just think that's so great because, a safe truth to tell is Jesus is neither right nor left. Well, of course it's true. That's a very safe truth to tell, right? Yep. It's a little bit more of a confrontational, courageous truth to say, I'm not sure how a well-discipled Christian can, in good conscience, vote for Democrats right now. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit harder truth to tell. But I mean, great thoughts on politics, Willie. That's not the primary purpose of this conversation, but no, that was really encouraging. Glad to hear it. I pray that the Lord blesses your ministry, particularly to the next generation there at your church and the school, and it bears a lot of fruit. And nestled in this broader conversation about the future of America is inescapably the Southern Baptist Convention. It is such a big piece of who we are as Americans, particularly who we are as Baptists, but it has a major impact on our country and on the world. And I think it's important that Southern Baptists have a little bit more of a political understanding of ourselves as a particular body, a denomination, if you want to call us that, in
Right.
American life. And we wield influence, good and godly influence, which is something we're trying to do at Center for Baptist Leadership, is not in any way, shape, or form to downplay the importance of sending missionaries overseas, planting churches, theological training. But it's when you pull that camera back and you say, hey, we're 13 million strong. We have some weight we could throw around here for the good of everybody in this country. And in order to do that, we need a healthy and vibrant Southern Baptist Convention. So, when we talked a year ago, after you shared your story, one of the main issues on our docket at the SBC annual meeting was the law amendment. And we'll get to that because it's coming back. But just in general, Willie, where do you see the SBC here now, a year later? Give us sort of a bill of health.
I see some positive signs. I see people waking up to some of the drifting that occurred. And I see more and more pastors going, okay, I wasn't sure what was going on. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I now know something is wrong. More voices are being raised up. I think Clint Presley has done a good job. He's been a good, steady voice, and he has been wise in the use of his words, and I think he's done a good job. I appreciate Clint, and hope he's reelected by acclamation. I think he will be. So there's some good signs. I think there is an earthquake that has yet to happen. That is just a real shaking and a real turning that is yet to happen. I don't know if it'll happen in Dallas. I don't know if it'll happen a year or Orlando, but I sense it's coming when whether it's a grassroots or it is the level of frustration that is out there finally kind of boils over to the top. And if I were advising entity leaders, I would say, you want to get out in front of that. You don't want to fight that. You don't want to act like it's not going to come. I'm old enough to remember when I was a boy in the 70s before the conservative resurgence. And I'm not that old. I was a child in the 70s, but I came right after the conservative resurgence started. I was in college. I've got papers from the 1970s that guys would write. And during that time in the 1970s, there were a lot of people saying to entity heads, you need to sit down and listen to these people who are concerned. Don't try to think you're going to hold this tide off. It's coming. And honestly, in a way, maybe it's good that they didn't, because when the tide finally came, you were able to just change every institution in SBC life, because the leaders had been resistant to change. Therefore, when the change came, it was dramatic. But they would have been far smarter, just from being shrewd and wise, to have sat down with people who were concerned and said, hey, what are you concerned about? And I don't want to portray this arrogance, this haughtiness. We are listening to the criticism, and we want to make some adjustments. I'm not sure that's happened yet. With all due respect, I don't think that's happened. I think there is a resistance, and I think there is the belief that it's not going to happen. Just a few folks are upset, and it's going to pass. It's going to pass. I don't. I think there's an earthquake coming. I think I think it's coming, and I don't know if it's going to happen this year, and I don't know the issue that is going to happen or what the issue will bring it. The law amendment was very, very close last year, as you know, and that could have been a kind of earthquake. I mean, I think it was, in a way, an earthquake, but came just missed being enacted as a bylaw. But there's going to be a moment here of conservative reckoning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, I think maybe one of the places that really shows up would be in the future and the viability of the cooperative program. That seems to be one of the things. I mean, the law amendment's very important, and we'll talk about that again. That's a theological no-brainer. That the fact that we can't just get it over the line with no issue shows a problem. Entities that seem pretty much completely unwilling to respond to the will of the messengers, like I would suggest the ERLC, and we can talk about that some too, would be another one. But the cooperative program is under significant duress, and that's really the heart of this entire endeavor. Recently, Dr. Org, had a op-ed talking about the future of the cooperative program. It's the 100th anniversary of the cooperative program. What an amazing thing. Praise God for that. And we have done so much more together than we could do apart. But when you do things together, you have to trust each other that you're doing the same thing. Dr. Jorg in this Baptist Press opinion, first person opinion editorial, he recognized there were issues with the cooperative program. He says he thinks it's been in decline essentially since the 90s. But then he says that he thinks the main thing that's at play here is this idea of expressive individualism, which was this idea that was popularized by other philosophers, but really brought into evangelical parlance via Carl Trueman's Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. We live in an anti-institutional age. People want to do their own thing. Willie, what's your reaction to that? What does he get right? If he's maybe missing something, let us know your take. When you saw that, what did you think?
Well, I like Dr. Org. I think he's been put in a really tough spot, and he didn't create this mess, and he's stepped in, to kind of help us, and I appreciate him a lot. I don't know him very well. We've met, but don't know him very well. I think he's right. Obviously, we are living in an age of individualism. That is obviously true. So if you think about it in denominational life, we've lived and done ministry in the last 20, 30 years in what people have called a post-denominational age. There's been kind of the mushy evangelical middle as opposed to evangelical distinctives or denominational distinctives. That's true. Yeah, there's an anti-institutional bias. But I don't think that's the whole truth. I just don't think that's the whole problem. I don't have all the data in front of me, but we heard from a cooperative program task force last year that there is a pretty precipitous decline in CP giving going. And I think when you look at the things that have happened over the last decade, there absolutely has to be a connection. There's some things I can do something about and some things I can't do a lot about. If the entire culture is going through an individualistic age, I don't know that I can wave a magic wand and change that. That's a broader sociological context. What I have to decide is how I'm going to operate within that context. And as a denomination, okay, what are we going to do in that context? You're not going to, wave the magic wand and all of a sudden everybody is pro-institutions again. But you have to decide, leading institutions and leading networks, okay, if we're in an individualistic age, what must we do in this moment? And you've got to look at the things you are responsible for. Well, we are responsible for blowing through $15 million in the last 5 years. And I'm being asked about it. I can just tell you, I have had people come to me. I could give you real-time stories of people coming to me and saying, as one couple did, Pastor, none of that's, I read about $15 million, give or take a little bit, that's been spent on sexual abuse reform thing. None of that's coming from the cooperative program, is it? And I had to go, well, I got some bad news for you. It absolutely comes from the cooperative program. And their face just kind of fell. And I could tell more about that story. That people are connecting that dot. And to think that doesn't have an impact, it's absolutely having it. I know it's having an impact in Clearwater, Florida at Calvary Baptist Church. And I can guarantee you, I can tell you of a lot of conversations. So we have to look at what we're doing. It's not enough just to blame the culture. We got to look at what we're doing and why we have lost trust. And again, to get back, not to just get back to that same argument, but if I had told you we'd spent $15 million, but we've made every Southern Baptist church safer, and we just tackled sexual abuse problem in a way like that's fantastic. You'd say, well, that was expensive, but hey, we did something good with it. But the truth is, I don't know that any of that money made anybody safer. I don't know that any of that effort went to help one child or help one church be strengthened in preventing sexual abuse. It went to help lawyers drive nice cars. It got blown on lawsuits and investigations that didn't make one child safer. That's what I would argue. And that is the tragedy of this. We miss the moment. So when you look at bad decisions and you look at the bad decisions that are being driven by personal vendettas and political ambition, you are eroding trust and you are eroding confidence. And that we can do something about, and we should.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, because we've spent all this money, like you said, on lawyers, on consultants, and really we got into this mess through leadership. This is something I've thought about a lot, and this is maybe another place the earthquake shows up is, what does it look like to actually hold people accountable for these things? I mean, we're looking at years now of men we entrusted to lead in certain entities and organizations, right? Whether it's executive committee or the ERLC or the even previous Southern Baptist presidents, or big name pastors, we're still part of our convention. Maybe some guys who are out there, younger guys who have aspirations for bigger leadership in the convention. And I keep thinking about this, and it's hard because you don't want to be petty or vindictive, but it's like, there are real names and real people who are associated with the leadership failures that made this mess that we're in. How do you, as a Southern Baptist pastor who's still very committed to the Southern Baptist Convention, wrestle with, will we ever get accountability, or do we just try to move on and get better leadership? What's the solution?
Well, you do try to move on, but it's okay. Here's what I would say: no one, there may be somebody, but no one is out there trying to set up guillotines and
sure,
people engage in penance and all that. We all make mistakes. And again, I've owned several that I go, man, I didn't see it. And now I do. When people change their mind all the time, when people change their mind, I look for three things because people are always changing their mind. But number one, tell me that you changed your mind. Tell me I was wrong. Say I was wrong, and now I think this. Just tell me that you changed your mind. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Tell me why you changed your mind. Because I like to see your work. I like to know you're not just telling me because that was popular and now it's not. Show me your work. Kind of how did you get there? And then tell me what you believe now. Like say it in a way that gives me confidence. Okay, that you've learned, you've grown. I'm not trying to beat people up to make mistakes. I've made mistakes, but I think Southern Baptists are very forgiving people. They're very gracious people. But you do want leaders who go, hey, waiving attorney-client privilege because we got a lot of that was a bad idea. I just love people say, hey, I voted for that, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was wrong. I realize now I was wrong. That was a bad idea. Or, we got caught up in investigating the executive committee. There was nothing to be gained there. We got caught up. I'm sorry. That was wrong. I've learned. We're going to do better. I think a lot of people would be very forgiving and very gracious. So I would say to those who are afraid to go, hey, you know what? I got some things wrong. You know what? It may take a minute to get off your high horse, but when you do, people will forgive you. People will love you. People will respect you more. And just be honest about it. And I think it was Tom Askew who said, we've got a fear of he called it a metanoia phobia or something like that. The fear of repentance. Repentance is part of our faith, owning your faults, owning your mistakes, and saying, hey, I made a mistake, but I've learned, and now here I am. We need some leaders who are going to do it because we made a lot of mistakes over the last couple of years.
Yeah, amen. And then if you're a leader who does all that, you too might get to join the very exclusive Center for Baptist Leadership podcast and tell your story with William Wolfe. I'd love to have you. So that's great, Willie. So we've got, I like this. You said it, it's kind of sticking in my head, the idea of an earthquake coming, but a lot of things to talk about there. One last question though, before we get into sort of the three big issues facing the convention. Do you think that if changes aren't made in the Southern Baptist Convention, that we are headed towards sort of a pan-evangelical fracturing of the SBC? Because that's sort of what I see. And actually, that's where I would agree with Dr. Org, that there is individualism at play. But actually, Willie, I see that individualism at play in some of our entities themselves, in some of our entity leaders who realize trust is down in the cooperative program. So that means I need to go around the cooperative program, get you to give directly to my entity. And so we have that at play. And at the same time, one of the things that's really on my heart for Southern Baptists is we're downplaying our Baptist distinctives. It's like we just want to be this general evangelical association of churches who used to be Baptist. I mean, that would be a mouthful for an acronym. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're on to something. I remember hearing a story, and there were so many stories, but I heard a story in 9/11 when the tower was on fire and people were trying to evacuate. And there's a story from way back then again of some people were trying to get down and out of the building, and they were going down, and then somebody met them in the stairwell, I don't know, 6th, 7th, 8th floor, something like that, and said, "Hey, it's blocked down here. I know you want to go down to get out, but I've already been down there. You got to go up, to the 10th floor and then over to the other side, and then you can get down." It's counterintuitive. The way to get out, it wasn't to go down, it was to go up and around. I think sometimes we think that when we hear numbers about, we hear membership is down or whatever is down, we think that the way to grow is to broaden the tent, to minimize distinctives, kind of get along with everybody, be this pan-evangelical denomination. But the way forward is actually the opposite. The way forward, I think, in the future is to renew our Baptist distinctives. It is to own them again. We have a proud heritage, a good doctrinal heritage. Go back and read some of you probably have the confessions of faith that Baptists have going back hundreds of years. That's who we are. What is needed now is clarity to restate that and kind of bring back what it means to be a Baptist. I think the way forward is actually counterintuitive. It's narrow the parameters. It's being clear about our convictions. And by narrowing the parameters, I really mean being clear about the parameters we have, being bold and clear about those distinctives, and bringing back what it means to be a Baptist. I think you would lose some people on the edges, on probably a bunch of edges. But I think the result would be a group of people who are proud about what they are, excited about what they are. And I think you would begin to draw people to that because they would say, I know what those people believe and I know where they stand. And right now, I need some people who are going to stand on the truth. So I think re-articulating Baptist distinctives, wouldn't it be great if one day, and I'm not impugning anyone, but wouldn't it be great one day most of our church plants actually wanted the Baptist label on their building?
Yes.
And I'm not knocking anybody who does it. I get why they didn't. We downplayed it on our side. But wouldn't it be great if what in the next 20 years happens is we go, you know what? We're so clear about who we are that we want to put it on the sign. We want everybody to know this is who we are. And we redefine with clear, unambiguous language what it means to be a Baptist.
Yes, I agree completely. And along with the clarifying, though, then comes the what's the friendliest word we can use here? The enforcing, the defending. So we have to articulate our distinctives, and then we have to defend them. There are some organizations and some people out there in Southern Baptist life who talk a lot about what they call it sort of cheerful, convictional confessionalism. That's great. I love being cheerful. I love being convictional. I appreciate confessions, but sometimes you have to defend those confessions if you want them to endure. And that brings us actually right to the law amendment. So last year, it was the second vote on putting this in our Constitution that we would only have men as pastors, qualified men as pastors in Southern Baptist Convention churches. And you said on our podcast last year, I remember it very clearly, you said that this is an important decision that we have to make as Southern Baptists because decisions become directions, right? And so the vote fell short in Indianapolis. And yet, very interestingly, and maybe unsurprisingly, a lot of people have realized, hey, we actually still need this. And so it's coming back up for a vote. This was clarified to us, I think, in particular through a rash of emails that went out from the Credentials Committee to churches who had submitted what they believed were churches in violation of the Baptist faith and message and therefore not in friendly cooperation, obviously having women pastors. And the Credentials Committee said, no, they're fine. So, Willie, as you saw some of that unfold, the Credentials Committee making pretty odd calls, we could say, and then this resurgence of the law amendment. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm again for the law amendment. I thought it should have been passed last time, and I said last time if it doesn't pass, it's not going away. To the people,
you did say that.
It's not going to go away. Like, are you thinking that, oh, gee, it's not, we kept it from being a bylaw. Okay, that's done. No, it's now we're just going to deal with it again next year. It's not going away. And in a way, it is a worst case scenario because 60% of the people William, that's a landslide in most votes, right? 60%. That means a lot of Baptists wanted that in the bylaws, a strong majority. Now, I realize it didn't get 2/3, but it didn't get 2/3 it just missed it by a smidgen. So you got 60+% of the people who walked away from that going, wow, I'm disappointed. We did not get what we wanted there. So I think we're in a quandary, and it's going to come back. I don't know. You may have better information than I do. I guess it's coming back in Dallas, and I hope so. And I would vote for it. I don't know if there will be a big push one way or the other, but it's going to be an issue until we settle that issue one way or the other. And what happened in the Credentials Committee this year is simply an example of why you need this issue. There is some level of confusion, unfortunately, in the use of the term pastor. And I like to say, there's been an inflationary use of the term pastor, and inflation devalues currency. And so you have churches that I think use that term and apply it to women that mean it. You have churches that use that term and maybe they didn't mean it. They just really hadn't thought through what they were saying. And maybe some that really aren't sure. And you could almost triage it. And what in a confusing moment like that, bright lines on the road are helpful to everyone. If you use it and you mean it, you believe that women can be elders, overseers in a church. We all need to see, okay, you said it and you mean it. And you shouldn't be in fellowship with the Southern Baptist Convention. The convention spoken very, very clearly on that over the last several years. The people who maybe they just use the term in a sloppy fashion. And I guess that's an argument like, we mean something different. And that's an argument some people have made. It's very sloppy, but words matter. Here's what you're doing. You're doing everyone a favor when you clarify your conviction, because now we have to ask the question, what do we mean when we use that word? And are we in alignment with the Southern Baptist Convention? Or no, we actually are not in alignment. Again, clarity is our friend here, and eliminating confusion because one church uses the term in one way and one church uses it in another way, I think is very important. That is not something we should have latitude on, because ecclesiology matters and biblical authority matters. So it's in the Baptist Faith and Message. It's already there. We've said this matters. It doesn't matter in every denomination, but it does for us. It does for us. And because we think the Bible speaks pretty clearly about it. So we should speak clearly. We should not be ambiguous. And by not passing the law amendment, I thought we engaged in ambiguity and a lack of clarity. And so here we are again. And here was the Credentials Committee all over again with New Spring Church. And I don't really even know all the issue there at that church. I'm sure they're a fine church and they do some fine things, but evidently they realized they were not in alignment with the SBC. And okay, we can part as friends, but actually they did us a favor there, but the Credentials Committee didn't do it. The Credentials Committee evidently didn't. I don't know what the reasoning is. And by the way, one of the problems the Credentials Committee has on these things, William, is they don't like to speak about these issues. Like they're supposed to handle them and then not tell you the rationale for the decision. And I think we got to get away from that. They got to be able to give a rationale for the decision. They should have to justify the decision in these very public cases, and the churches should want them to. This can't be done behind closed doors. Say, here's what we decided. Here's why we decided it. But the bottom line is, there's ambiguity here, and that's what we saw again, and that's because we didn't pass the law amendment.
That's right. Well, it definitely is coming back. So Juan Sanchez, he said he released an open letter to the Southern Baptist. I got it in front of me here. This was back in March 4th, so a little over 2 months ago. And this was right after the Credentials Committee was back in the news. And he's saying, we need to do it again. We fell short. We're supporting a renewed effort. And what they're going to try to do now is they're going to offer it again. And then when it gets referred to the executive committee, which we could have a whole nother conversation on things we need to debate getting referred to and dying at the executive committee, they will seek to appeal that ruling and bring it out to debate, get it done. So if we can get it done in Dallas and pass it for the first time again in the second round, we could potentially ratify it on your home turf in Orlando. which would be good for sure.
I think it would be good. And I've talked to some people that didn't vote for it, that I think are very good people. And they feared it would be used in an overly constrictive way. Part of the dynamic here is you have mega churches that have large staffs, and maybe some people would consider us that. You have a lot of people on staff, and they feel like some of them, hey, we have women serving in staff roles. We don't view them as pastors, elder, or overseer, but maybe they work in a missions area or they work in a next gen area. And they were one of the rumors behind the scenes, and people were using to get people afraid was, oh, they're going to come after all the women. They're going to come after a woman on staff who's not a pastor. And I said, well, when they do, we'll deal with it. But I don't think that is what's going to happen. That to me is a scare tactic. You can have a woman serving in a ministerial role. We have women missionaries. There are many roles that people can serve, and churches have different kinds of staffs. But we know what a pastor is, and we're not playing word games here. We know who the pastor, elder, overseers of the church are. And I think Baptists are quite capable, William, of having some of those conversations where maybe people look at things differently. But the clear line that says the pastor, elder, overseer is a word that, pastor means elder, overseer in Baptist nomenclature, because we think that's the New Testament. And that matters to us. So don't use that word inconsistent with the way the New Testament. You don't get to change the definition of words and then introduce something that is, we think, unbiblical and harmful to the movement of the church.
Yeah, that's well said. And your point on people who have changed their minds, it's obviously been much less of a hot topic this time around. We're about to get to one of the hottest topics, the ERLC. But I hope that, I'm not sure exactly what the strategy is. We'll engage a little bit more on it at CBL as we get closer to the convention. I mean, we published a lot on it. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, wait a minute, what do I think about the law amendment? Well, just go to our website. We've got, 10 articles on it, podcasts on it. You can look at Mike Law's original effort. But if you've changed your mind on it, great. Welcome. Come back, and you're exactly right on that point there too, Willie. We don't live in a day and age where I think there's really much legitimate fear over being too tight to the right or overly aggressive in policing people. We live in a very permissive age. And so just tightening things up a little bit on biblical language for pastors, I don't think it's going to lead to a witch hunt. I think it'll help our convention.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, here we go. One down, two more to go. The ERLC has been in the news quite a lot lately. And I mean, obviously last summer, Brent Leatherwood, the president of the ERLC, was fired and then rehired. I was actually in Armenia when that was happening. I was visiting the oldest Christian nation in the world, and so I'm halfway around the world when these major news events are unfolding. There was a vote last year at the convention offered by Tom Maskell under Bylaw 25 to begin the process of disbanding the entity. And so I just would love to get your take on it. I'm not trying to get you to talk poorly about anybody. But it's a source of debate. It's a source of contention. And it will be something that we take votes on at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting this year. So Willie, if you were talking to 12,000, Southern Baptists there, what would you tell them we should do about the ERLC?
Well, I have, publicly said a couple of things, and I think I remember years ago, again, one of the conventions, Dr. Adrian Rogers, it was back in the old, there was an old controversy about what was known then as the Baptist Joint Committee of Public Affairs. The old guys will remember that debate. And we had a couple of years where everybody wanted to defund that. And it was this international Baptist body, and Southern Baptists were, it was like the United Nations, and we were like America. We were paying the lion's share, and it was a very left-wing group. And we went through a couple of years, everybody trying to defund it. And I remember Dr. Adrian Rogers finally stood from the floor. It wasn't from the platform, from the floor. And he said, Baptist brothers and sisters, we have marched around this mountain long enough. It's time to make a decision. And we made a decision, and that's history. I kind of think we've been marching around this mountain for a couple of years. I'm not I have no personal animosity with the people at the ERLC. I don't know Dr. Leatherwood personally. He's one of the Indian heads I've never really gotten to know. I'm sure he's a wonderful husband and a great father. And if we want to sit down and just talk about our testimony, I'm sure we have a lot in common. But I think the ERLC has lost the confidence of Southern Baptists, and it's lost my confidence. And again, I don't mean this with personal animosity. Somebody asked me what I would say the other day if I were talking to him. I think my first question would be, will you acknowledge that you took funding from non-Baptist sources over the last several years, left-leaning advocacy groups that you funded? To me, that's shocking. When I heard that, I thought, no, that's not true. That's not true. But then I've seen the receipts and in some of the books and articles that have been written. Oh, yeah. Some of these conferences, some of these events absolutely were funded by non-SBC groups. What is a Southern Baptist Convention entity doing, particularly one that is supposed to represent us in ethics and politics, public affairs, taking money from non-SBC groups, many of whom would be diametrically opposed to the overwhelming number of Southern Baptists? To me, that you just got to come clean on that and say, look, we did it. I wish there had been an apology. I wish there was some commitment to say we'll never do that again. That is a terrible idea. Again, it's hard because I care about people. Dr. Moore, I was a fan of Dr. Moore. He preached at Calvary circa 2015 or so. I had him at the Pastors Conference when I was the president of the Pastors Conference. This would have been 15, something like that. I thought he was charming. I thought he was smart. I thought he was a new leader for, a new age. I thought he was conservative. He talked about, he was saying the right things. He has some books from the early 2000s that I thought were great on adoption. And there are a lot of people, even big critics today, who would say early on, they were supporters. They thought he was one of us. But then you watch the trajectory, and I would just say to the RLC, with all due respect, you have to understand how damaging that trajectory was. The confidence of Southern Baptist people has been shook. It has been lost. By the way, they're on a PR campaign now, posting things. They're going around and meeting with senators and opposing Planned Parenthood. Well, I'm glad you're opposing Planned Parenthood. I mean, I'm for the defunding of Planned Parenthood. I've been for you forever. But it kind of reminds me of the guy, who cheats on his wife, and he's been caught in 3 or 4 affairs, and he blew the family inheritance on gambling. And so he thinks he's going to stop at Walgreens and buy flowers on the way home and make it all right. I mean, you just want to go, brother, you're way beyond Walgreens here. This is, you've got a mess and it's got to be cleaned up. And I just feel like some of this latest PR stuff with the RLC is just a little PR. And, we have about a decade of the ERLC being a very divisive group that seemed to want to look down on average Baptists and has alienated so many Baptist people. And I just do not see the reaction from them. Last year, if 40% of the people had voted to fire me at Calvary Baptist Church in a meeting, I don't think I'd go home and spike the ball. I think I'd say, I got a problem. And, I would have brought my staff in the next day and said, okay, I want us from this day on to act like we got fired. We didn't win a vote. We lost a vote. And we need to have some radical changes. And I need to go have some big time conversations with some people. The house is on fire. Instead, we're treated to what I think is a pretty pedestrian PR campaign. I don't know that there's been a real change of perspective. And I don't know anybody who believes that. So I really do think we have to act. I would vote. I voted with Tom's motion last year. I would vote for a similar motion this year. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I do think at some point the ERLC is going to have to be held accountable. And I'd say to the trustees and people at ERLC, you've got to read the writing on the wall here. You're just delaying a painful, inevitable end. Read the writing on the wall here. Something has got to be done to restore confidence from Southern Baptists in the Ethics and Religious Liberty Convention. I don't have it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And then just to reiterate, not only did they take what was essentially, in any normal Baptist church would be interpreted as an overwhelming vote of no confidence, right? It's like if you get called to a church with 70% of the vote, you don't go. you need like 90%. That's how it works, right? You need almost everybody to want you there. So whether it's 35 to 70, 65 or 40 to 60, that was a vote of no confidence, which from what I understand, the trustees maybe took a little bit of that to heart. The previous chairman, Kevin Smith from Florida, took some of that to heart. And then we had Brent's comments about Biden stepping down from the race and saying that it was a selfless act. And then the whole saga with, him being fired and then rehired. I mean, so it would be like, you got a vote of no confidence, and then the chairman of your board of elders told everyone you were fired, but then you got him fired and you came back and you said, no, I'm back, guys. I mean, how do you come back from that?
It's very sad. It's very painful. And again, I don't take any joy in people being in pain, but I just think you have to understand how bad it has gotten. If you think we're going to have a little PR campaign and go shake the hand of a Republican senator and everything's going to be okay. No, more confidence has been lost than that. And it's going to take a lot more than that, at least to restore my confidence. And I don't know if I'm in the majority or not, but there's a story, William, if I had to put a microcosm of what some of the problem, not just with the ERLC, but some of the distrust that exists. If I had one story, like Esau and the porridge, that one story typifies his whole life. I think I would go to the clip where Dr. Moore, in a convention, you may have seen this clip, where a pastor, I think from Arkansas, stood at the microphone, had a question about a mosque, I think on a 9/11 site, and it was we had filed an amicus brief supporting the mosque, and it was a religious liberty issue in their minds. And I get that. There's a conversation to be had about that. But this pastor, I don't know who he is. I don't know if his church is big or small, but he's nobody famous. With a Southern twang and an Arkansas drawl, ask a question, and maybe it was a little confrontational. And then when Dr. Moore responded to it, and Dr. Moore was a very skilled homiletician, he used a brilliant rhetorical switcheroo, and then dunked on that guy in front of everybody. He's very good. He's smart. And he dunked on that guy and just kind of destroyed him. And a few people clapped, and a lot of people were nervous. I was there, and I remember thinking, boy, that to me is symbolic of what's wrong right now. Here was a pastor from somewhere in Arkansas, probably a little church, goes to the convention, has an honest question, even if you disagree with it. He has got an honest question. It's an honest, listen, building a mosque on the 9/11 site, come on, that's an honest question. Right? You can argue things around, but that's a fair question. And here we have an entity head with, sitting on the platform, tailored suit, PhD sticking out of his front pocket, and he's dunking on this Billy Baptist from somewhere in the Southern Baptist Convention. To me, that's the picture right now. To me, that's what's wrong. You forgot who the people are. Jerry Vines used to talk about Billy Baptist in his great sermons, Baptist in his Bible. And he created a character of the ordinary Baptist layman or pastor. I think some of our leaders have forgotten about Billy Baptist, and they have forgotten. And okay, sure, you dunked on some guy at a microphone and made yourself look good. Is that what we want to be? Like, doesn't that pastor matter? Shouldn't his question be taken seriously? Should we really want to make fun of him? Is that what we want to do? I think that's the problem. We've got to get back to where that guy at that microphone matters. And that every entity head and every leader respects those Baptists. Because I don't think they do now. I think some of them, and this is the ERLC, I think they looked at that guy as the enemy. They looked at the guys in my pews and the average church and the average pastor as the enemy who needed to be lectured to, instead of, the leaders who needed to be served. But the people are the leaders of our convention.
Yeah, that's right. We'll never outgrow Billy Baptist. That's who we are, right?
That's who we are. And we
if
shouldn't be ashamed of that. We need to quit being ashamed of that.
That's right. And we certainly don't need leaders who are ashamed of that, right?
Yep.
And so, well, thank you, Willie. I mean, that's well said, very important. We'll be discussing that. And then the last topic that I wanted to get your insights on is the quest for increasing financial transparency in the Southern Baptist Convention. And this is related to the ERLC thing, because I didn't say it exactly, and I think you said it a little bit, but fundamentally, the failure at the ERLC, I would argue, is a failure of trustee management. Brent's not operating, in a vacuum. He's got a board of trustees that are responsible for holding that entity in trust, and not acting like cheerleaders for him and the entity, but holding him accountable and responsible. And I would suggest that our trustee system at all of our entities, some of them I'm sure are better than others, but we have a trustee system that in many ways is broken. And so, Rhett Burns, a pastor from South Carolina, wonderful brother, is offering, again, he's been doing this for a couple of years, a motion to try to get increased financial transparency from our entities to be made available to Southern Baptist Convention churches. And it's not just about seeing what's happening with the money, though that is important, but it's also giving us a better rubric by which to judge whether or not the trustees are doing their job. He's received quite a bit of pushback on it. It's been one of those motions that's been referred to the executive committee every year. It's gone to die in the executive committee subcommittee every year. And we actually haven't had an honest debate or vote on it on the floor yet. He's going to try to bring it back. So, Willie, you've been a trustee. You've been in the system. So you know what's going on. What is your take on financial transparency efforts?
Well, yeah, you're right. I've been a trustee, and I think most of the people who serve as trustees they're good people. I don't have any dirt to report. People were trying to do their best, and the system is what a system is. Every system has strengths and weaknesses, and there are weaknesses inherent in the system, of course, because you have so many trustees at some of these boards. You have pastors. The overwhelming majority of them are pastors. And, one of the skill sets, pastors didn't necessarily grow up with financial accounting degrees, right? That's not what we went to school on. And maybe that's not even where our gifts are. I rely on a lot of people here at Calvary to do that, try to see the big picture. But I don't go to all our finance committee meetings here because there are people who can do it better than I can, frankly. And now I think a lot of pastors are like that. I mean, we can read a balance sheet, but it's just, I've never been one to be motivated by a bunch of accounting. And I think probably a lot of pastors are like that. So you sit in and then you come from smaller churches a lot of times. You're sitting in these rooms and all of a sudden you're looking at balance sheets with hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. You're talking about big numbers. And yet you're still looking at a one-sheet report, or two-sheet report, a summary, and you only have a small group of trustees that are actually on the executive board that are looking at more details. And again, the reports themselves are curated. I'm not suggesting they're dishonest. I'm just suggesting there are ways you can report numbers. You can report numbers a lot of different ways. So we have a problem, and the problem right now is again that there's a lot of distrust. I sense that. And having been out of that system for a while, I see it. The Rhett Burns motion, to me, is a simple, straightforward motion. First of all, as a good congregationalist, why not vote it up or down? Like, we say we're congregating, we all go to the convention. We spend a lot of money to go. Our churches send us. Let the people vote on it. Why wrap it up in committee? It's obviously there's an interest. So put it out before the people. Have an honest debate. Are we afraid of that? And you know what? Maybe it loses. Maybe people go, no, that's too much. Okay, we'll accept that. But why not? First of all, it's frustrating that you can't vote on it. Number two, I got to be honest with you, and I served as a trustee. I don't see what the big deal is. The information that he is asking seems pretty basic. Every trustee ought to know that information. And I can tell you this, and I'm not casting aspersions here on anyone. I don't think most trustees know that information. The information that he's asking to be revealed in the 990, if the trustees knew that information, we'd be way ahead of the game. Again, I'm not an expert on accounting and the 990 principle, but I think it's the top 5 salaries in an organization, as well as some top shelf things. I don't think most trustees have that information. Just to be honest, I'm not an expert on every board. You could ask them. Go ask. Everybody should go ask somebody they know serving as a trustee and say, do you know what the top 5 salary employees at the entity make? And is it yes or no? You don't have to tell me, just yes or no. I think you're going to find 90+% will say no.
Of trustees.
Of trustees. We're not talking about people. We're talking about trustees.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that in an age in which there's some distrust, that we don't have enough information going to the right people. If somebody comes to me and begins to ask for information, look, we have again, some people would say it's a big church. Everything's relative, of course. We don't publish all the salaries. Some churches, in a smaller church, maybe we did. We have, if you took the full-time, part-time school employees, church, I don't know, 300 plus employees, if you put them all together, maybe. No, we don't publish all their salaries out there. I don't think any large church does. But if somebody, I've said this many times, somebody comes and asks a specific question about mine or anyone else, I'll say this on there. We would tell them. We would tell them. We do tell our leadership base. They see it. I give it to them. I want them to see it. When you don't give people the information they're asking for, they begin to assume the worst. Because why wouldn't you tell them? Will somebody think it's too much? Probably. So what?
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, I've told them, somebody said, well, but somebody will complain about your salary. Who cares? Maybe it is too much. Maybe it is. Maybe somebody needs to recognize that. But if somebody's a critic, they're going to be a critic anyway. I don't think they're going to be criticizing more than they are now. So put the information out there if there's nothing to hide. I don't think this is a radical request. Having served as a trustee, first of all, trustees should have this information. I don't know that they do. But I don't know why all Southern Baptists can't have this information. There's nothing radical. And here's another thing, William. When people try to argue against a motion like this, you look at the reasons they're using, and you go, wait a second, you're not dealing with the issue. And I'm hearing people say things like, with all due respect, I've heard some leaders say things like, well, people want to have all the information that the trustees have. Well, first of all, it might not be as much as you think. But secondly, no one's asking that. Right. No one is saying, I want all the information of all the salaried employees. Nobody is saying we want information of people who are in an IMB situation, who are overseas, or in a situation where they're, Rhett Burns, I think, said that's not an issue. We would be glad to exempt. I don't think it comes into play anyway, but if there were a security issue with somebody serving overseas, of course, we're not looking at that. People want to know that their money is being spent on the mission. And when we've just blown $15 million because of bad decisions, frankly, very bad decisions, people have a right to go, okay, tell me where the money's going. Tell me where the money's going. And we've seen enough in some of the entities over the last 20 years. We've seen some issues in several of them, that this is a fair request. And if I wanted to restore trust and I wanted to restore confidence, I'd give the people first of all, I'd give them a chance to vote on it. And if they voted yes, I'd give it to them in 15 minutes and say, here it is. If you think it's too much, have at it. They'll debate about it, probably debate about it 15, 20 minutes and go on something else if there's no problem. But it does make you wonder, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I agree entirely. And I think Rhett does too. And he's got a great website out there, sbctransparency.net. So if you're listening to this, folks, you can check that out. I like the way that Rhett has summarized it. He said, it's in order, it's simple, it's Baptist, and it deserves a vote, right? And maybe the people don't want it. I think they do. And as I've thought about this quite a bit, getting back to what you said, earlier on about the earthquake coming, just the state of the Southern Baptist Convention, it really does kind of feel like it's our medicine. Like it's time to take some medicine for the Southern Baptist Convention. Nobody wants to take the medicine. I've got 3 small boys. They don't like to take their medicine, but it helps them get better. there is some temporary displeasure, some temporary discomfort. You don't like the medicine, okay? But it gets into your system and it starts working what it's supposed to do, and it restores health. I mean, that's the way I really see it. It's not a silver bullet, but of all the things out there, because it touches every entity, it touches everything in Southern Baptist Convention life. It touches the cooperative program. If we wanted to rebuild trust through more transparency, it's time to take our medicine. And the good doctor from South Carolina, Rhett Burns, is encouraging us to do it. So I hope to see it pass.
I do too. It's a fair request. It's not coming. If you listen to Rhett Burns, here's a guy who has if he has an agenda, I don't know it. He's a good Baptist. I think he's served in international missions. He loves the Lord, pastors his church. He's making a fair request. And too many people feel like they're getting like the back of the hand. They're asking, and instead they're being told, be quiet and just keep sending the money. And the earthquake's coming. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I would say to my friends in leadership, and if you don't, I would urge you, get ahead of this. Talk to the people, accept some of these measures. It's okay. Get ahead of this. If you don't, it's going to run over you. It's going to run over you. The earthquake is coming. And when it came in the late 70s and 80s, most of the NAD heads resisted it. They didn't believe it was coming. The earthquake came, and then they went, then it was a war, and then they lost. If they had sued for peace a lot sooner, they probably wouldn't have lost their jobs. And maybe there wouldn't have been as big a change as there was in the SBC. So God is providential and all of that. But if you're not afraid of these things, if there's nothing to hide, why not sit down and make peace, listen to people who are making reasonable, fair requests, and get ahead of this and prevent an earthquake that is going to be so disruptive that it brings inordinate pain. So these to me are common sense measures that we ought to embrace.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Willie. And I agree. Law amendment, ERLC reform, financial transparency. There's more that could be done. Always more that could be done.
That's a great start, though.
That is a great start. Shore up some of our theological leakage in the Southern Baptist Convention, reform an entity that has, it's been divisive and been debated. I was thinking last night, the fact that we talk about the ERLC so much tells me that there's a problem with the ERLC. And then financial transparency. You've been very generous with your time, Willie. It's great talking to you. I really enjoy it, and I am personally encouraged by it. Any closing words of wisdom, thoughts, or counsel to our Southern Baptist friends as we prepare for Dallas?
Well, I said it even, I think, last year. I still believe most Southern Baptists are, and there was something I saw out around yesterday about even the voting trends of Southern Baptists. Maybe you saw it. It confirmed what I've always known. The vast majority of our Southern Baptist people are Bible-believing people. They're conservative. They want, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, they are convictional. And I don't think the liberal drift is happening in most of our leaders and in most of our churches. But I do think that in some of the institutions and the organizations and the network apparatus, there has been some drift. And therefore, there needs to be a correction. I think it may have been Benjamin Franklin who said, every generation needs a revolution. And that's not just because they get bored. It's because institutions need to be corrected. They just inevitably do. Drifting is a part of life. Prone to wonder, Lord, I feel it. We need correction. And I think we need that right now. And maybe these things in Dallas would keep an earthquake from happening. They would just be corrective medicine. Otherwise, there could be a heart attack to the system, and it could be very, very painful. So I hope we'll do the right things we need to do. And I think healing would come if we would do those things.
Amen. Thank you, brother. We'll all be praying for that. I'm sure you will be too. Thank you again for joining us. It's wonderful to talk to you. And I look forward to seeing you in Dallas here in just a few weeks.
We'll be there. Thank you, William.
The Center for Baptist Leadership Podcast is powered by American Reformer, hosted by William Wolfe, with audio production by Jared Cummings. Our music is a custom remix of Soldiers of Christ in Truth Arrayed the official hymn of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. To help CBL reform and revitalize Christian institutions, please consider making a generous donation today at centerforbaptistleadership.org.